Good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining us. I wanted to highlight a type of crime that we're experiencing a lot of here recently. And we're going to give you two case studies from two very recent and scary cases. We're also going to talk about some of the things that we're doing currently to try to curtail this activity, if not eliminate it altogether. So the crime that I'm talking about is scams. Right now we're seeing a huge uptick in scams. Primarily the jury duty scam. I don't know if y'all have seen on social media, we post about it a lot, but in a jury duty scam and scams that are somewhat similar in nature, people will call the victim and identify themselves as government officials. In some instances, they use a real name of an actual, so like they'll look up online the names of my command staff and they'll actually use the name of a real BCSO deputy chief. In some instances, they'll actually spoof the number and it'll look like it's coming from the sheriff's office on your caller ID. We've had some cases here recently where it's been larger dollar figures than what we've seen even in years past. And some yesterday we had one in particular that's got a very different element to it, and I'll kind of go into that. So let me show you the first case study that we have. Okay, this first one that we're talking about happened January 28th. And bear in mind, up to this point, we'd seen $10,000 dollar amounts being scammed out of these folks. In this instance, last month, we had a lady that got scammed out of $25,000 in one fell swoop. So victim was 64 years of age. She was called by someone, and it did show 3356000 on her caller ID, which is the non-emergency number from the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. She was told she had a gag order and she was not allowed to talk to anybody during the course of this. And they kept her on the phone talking, told her she had a failure to appear summons. They requested her to go to several different locations and go to these ATMs, BTMs, and make deposits to pay her fine. Unbeknownst to her, what she was actually doing was purchasing Bitcoin, is what she was doing. And these Bitcoin machines can be, that's when I say BTM, Bitcoin teller machines. You can go to many grocery stores, even convenience stores that have these machines. And again, people don't know that they're actually purchasing Bitcoin, which makes it harder to trace. They kept the victim on the phone for several hours, and she was, of course, described as being in an emotional state by the time that the authorities reached her, because again, she'd been on the phone with these scammers for several hours. They were scaring her, telling her she was going to be arrested, had her driving from location to location, making these deposits. She's an older lady and was probably very, very flustered by that point. And in this instance, we're trying to get the money back. But it's being that it's Bitcoin, sometimes these scammers are in other parts of the country. Sometimes they're even in other countries. And in some instances, we've actually found that these calls have been traced, not necessarily in these, but we've found where some of these rings have been traced back to prison systems in other states. So in other words, they're prison inmates that have gotten hold of cell phones, and they're perpetrating these frauds from behind bars. Let me go to the next case study. This one actually happened yesterday. Female, age 48, again, unknown number on her caller ID. She was told she was under a gag order. She couldn't talk to anybody. This case came to our attention yesterday morning around 9 a.m. Her husband actually called her in as a missing person. She was at work. She got a call that she needed to come to 200 North Canal to pay a fine because she had missed a court date, missed jury duty, and she thought she was coming down here to pay the fine. They actually kept her, and they redirected her and told her, no, if you go to the jail, we're going to arrest you, so why don't you go over here and pay the fine instead. So they had her on the phone for over 8 hours the entire time. Had her driving around to several different locations. Her husband was calling her to try to find out where she was because he could see her moving around on her OnStar, but she was not able to answer the phone because the scammers kept telling her, do not switch over, do not talk to anybody, you're under a gag order. So she was able to send text messages, but he was not able to reach her, which made him even more suspicious. Finally, later in the day, he was able to ping where her location was. A deputy and an investigator from the sheriff's office intercepted her there and were able to make contact with her. Even seeing two officers face to face, she had to ask the people on the line for permission to get off the phone and talk to the investigators. Once the investigator grabbed the phone from her and started talking, they hung up the phone. During the course of this scam yesterday, though, they actually did a Zoom call with her. And she spoke to somebody that she was under the impression was a judge, even though she couldn't see his face. But that's an element that we've never seen before, is them utilizing a Zoom call. They sent her a QR code, and she was able to access the Zoom link and speak to the quote-unquote judge. Again, several different locations. The last location was in the area of Bitters and 281. That's where the deputies finally made contact with her and were able to get her to disconnect the phone and let her know that she'd been scammed. In this instance, $22,500 over the course of several different transactions. And so again, we use this, let me use this as an example to remind the community, A, we will never ever call you to tell you that you've got a warrant for your arrest. Think about it. If you've got a warrant for your arrest, we're going to show up and arrest you. We're not going to call you and tell you you have a warrant for your arrest. Second, law enforcement agencies, none of the ones that I know of, any of the ones here locally, are ever going to call you asking you for money by phone. Certainly, again, if you ever have a real fine to pay, then you go pay it at the courthouse. We're not going to have you go to a Bitcoin machine or an ATM at some convenience store or at a grocery store. There's right ways to pay your fines. And we're not going to have you bouncing around from convenience store to convenience store depositing money into these machines. Let me show you what the next slide is. These are actually documents that they sent her at some point. Kind of realistic looking, right? Even to us as a law enforcement officer, we've got to look at this and second guess what we're looking at. So these are actually documents that have the victim's name on them. One of them looks to be an arrest warrant. And the other one is some sort of a maintain contact order that says you have to stay on the phone with authorities once we've made contact with you. Again, these are completely fake, doctored up documents, and we'll share these with your news desks later on. But again, just to add a little bit of realism to it is what they're doing to these folks. Was that the last slide? Okay, so let me tell you one of the things that we're doing here recently. You may have seen, again, on social media, we spend a lot of time posting on social media to warn people about this. If you look at our Bexar County Sheriff's Office patrol cars, we placed a bumper sticker on the back of our patrol car that's got a QR code that says hang up on scammers, and you can scan that QR code and it leads you to a video saying, hey, look, here's what's this jury duty scam, don't fall for it. So we're doing everything that we can to get the word out. This afternoon, I took a step that we'll see what ends up happening with it. I'm hopeful that it'll show some great results. Here recently, I had the opportunity to go to a sheriff's conference, and I linked up with sheriffs from across the country. I shared this as one of our top issues, and a sheriff from Douglas County, Nebraska, shared with me what they had done with some success. They got a state law passed in Nebraska, but additionally, they were able to get a city ordinance in the city of Omaha, ordering the operators that own these machines or operate these machines in their stores, ordering them to put up some sort of a notice. And he said that once they did that, it basically eliminated the problem. And so recently, today, I sent a letter over to City Council and Mayor Jones requesting meetings with them and requesting that they consider putting an ordinance on the books to address this. We took the liberty of designing what we think the sign should look like if they're able to do this for us. Obviously, being that it's the city and it's their ordinance, they can redesign this sign as much as they want, and I'm fine with it. We would just like to see them do something to, at least within the city limits, try to eliminate the possibility that people might fall for this scam. Maybe we'll have some of the same kind of luck that Omaha, Nebraska had. We actually even went through the process of writing a draft ordinance for them and sent that over to them as well. Again, we've got a pretty good working relationship with all levels of the city, police department, city council, the mayor. So I'm going to be in touch with them very soon, setting up meetings. And again, I'm going to try to follow this through until it comes to fruition, and we'll see what ends up happening. But you know, we're taking some what we think are pretty new and innovative steps, following the lead of what some other jurisdictions have done, and we're hoping that it has a measurable effect in bringing down some of this activity. One of the other things we're going to be sharing with y'all later is, we're going to share with you the entire packet, what we sent to the City Council. And in that actually has our statistics from 2020 all the way up to 2025. And the number of frauds and the dollar figures is just, it's trending way upward. And I have no doubt this year, unless we do something drastic, is going to be even higher. So let me just do this in Spanish real quick, and then we'll open it up to whatever questions you might have. Esta tarde nosotros estamos tratando de trabajar con un asunto que nosotros tenemos, que ya hace varios años, que este asunto de estafas que están pasando en nuestra comunidad. Tenemos este problema donde los sospechosos que hacen estos delitos, que cometen estos delitos, les hablan a las víctimas y les dicen que tienen órdenes por su arresto por alguna razón. Un tiquete, han fallado en una fecha de la corte, han fallado en contestar una orden de jurado y tienen orden por su arresto. Ya de allí se quedan en el teléfono con las víctimas por varias horas, los dirigen a ir a varias tiendas para hacer transacciones en las ATMs que están ahí en las tiendas. Ahí las víctimas ellas piensan que están pagando una multa, pero lo que están haciendo es comprando Bitcoin en estas máquinas, y con esto les quitan mucho dinero. Nosotros hemos visto por varios años ya donde les quitan $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 a un jalón. El mes pasado y anoche nosotros hemos visto donde ya les quitan más que $20,000 a las víctimas. En enero fue un caso de $25,000. Anoche fue más que $22,000 que le quitaron a esta víctima, y las tienen en el teléfono por varias horas mientras que les quitan este dinero. Los sospechosos ellos usan la tecnología para copiar nuestro número de teléfono. Entonces, en el ID de la víctima, muchas veces parece que están hablando de la oficina del sheriff del condado de Bexar. Sale el número, si es el número de nosotros. Ayer usaron el sistema, o algo nuevo, que ellos se pusieron en contacto con la víctima por medio de Zoom, y tuvieron una junta, y la víctima, haz de cuenta que ella estaba hablando con un juez, pero en vez de ser un juez, realmente era uno de estos sospechosos. Entonces, después de 8 horas en el teléfono con estos sospechosos, le quitaron mucho dinero a esta señora, y nosotros ojalá quisiéramos recoger ese dinero para ella, pero ahorita no se sabe si vamos a tener éxito. Entonces, nosotros estamos haciendo todo lo posible para tratar de mejorar esta situación. Hoy día le mandé una carta a los concilios de la ciudad de San Antonio y el alcalde, para tratar de ver si ellos quisieran pasar una ordenancia en la ciudad para poner noticia en las tiendas que tienen estas máquinas. Ojalá eso les vaya a dar la notificación a las víctimas que no deberían hacer lo que les están pidiendo estos sospechosos, y ojalá no vayan a ser víctimas de este delito. Any questions?
Chief, español.
Yes, sir.
Pregunta, me llegan muchos mensajes con respecto a colaboraciones con la policía, el departamento de bomberos, una colaboración. De hecho, hay mucha gente que llama: hola, soy el bombero fulano de tal, estamos pidiendo una colaboración. ¿Esto también es un método de...?
Nosotros vemos muchas de las cosas que estos sospechosos hacen. Diferentes cosas. A veces son por medio de teléfono, les llaman que fallaron a una cita de corte. Otras veces les mandan texto que en las carreteras donde hay tolls, que nomás tiene que hacer clic al link y ya ahí pueden pagar su multa. Hay diferentes maneras de que ellos están haciendo estos fraudes, pero nosotros con hemos visto que han tenido más éxito estos sospechosos aquí en este condado. Entonces, con eso tenemos las esperanzas que trabajando con la ciudad, ojalá vayamos a quitar ese problema ya de encima.
Sure. Is there any, I read this a while back, that some law enforcement agencies were trying to go after these places that house these Bitcoin machines, for allowing, a 75-year-old woman in a walker to stand there and feed $15,000 into Is there anything you guys are looking for? Is that feasible? Is that something that would?
I think it's very feasible. I'd love to see something like that happen. I mean, hopefully, and we've had some success with this, right? So when we very first started this, one of the major retailers here in town actually was doing away with the machines because we were having so many problems with them, and so we appreciated that. Some of the smaller mom and pop convenience stores that are doing it, obviously there's still some places, and we can actually share some of the addresses of the ones that these folks had to go to. Look, I think all said and done to the stores, I know that they're making a commission off of everybody that comes in and uses those machines. And so I don't want to say that they're in on it, of course. I'm not going to launch any accusations like that. But certainly, if you've got an elderly person there and they're on the phone with somebody and they're clearly flustered, because both of these ladies that we're dealing with were flustered extremely, shouldn't you, at least the decent thing would be to ask, ma'am, are you okay? Is somebody asking you to do this? I would like to see more involvement, more training for the people that own these things and operate these things. But yeah, absolutely. If somebody's knowingly doing it, I am certainly not beyond going and filing charges on somebody if we do find out that they're complicit.
Sheriff, estamos viendo que ahora están copiando sus números de teléfono de
Sí.
la oficina y también están dando nombres reales de oficiales, de alguaciles. Entonces, ¿qué es lo que la gente tiene que ver en específico para no caer en esos fraudes?
Lo que el público tiene que saber es que nosotros nunca le vamos a hablar para decirles que tienen orden por su arresto. Nunca le vamos a hablar para pedirles dinero por medio del teléfono. Entonces, si alguien le habla diciendo que están con esta agencia o otra agencia, que son agentes federales, que es un juez, que es un oficial de la policía, simplemente cuélgales. Y si ya de ahí alguien tiene el pendiente que realmente tienen orden por su arresto, entonces háblales a la agencia realmente. Entonces no hablen al número en su caller ID, pueden buscar por medio del internet el número verdadero de la agencia, entonces de ahí pueden hablar a la agencia. Más que seguro las personas que contestan los teléfonos van a saber que hay fraudes así que están pasando en nuestra comunidad, y ya de ahí podemos decirles a la víctima que no tienen orden por su arresto. Pero lo que tienen que saber es que nosotros nunca vamos a hablarle así, y simplemente colgar el teléfono y ya de ahí pueden hablar a la policía.
Are finding suspects in this case actually feasible? I know that it's hard when they could be in other parts of the country,
Sure.
they're not in the state, not in the city. Is something like that even feasible with the sheriff's office? Would you be working with other law enforcement or even the federal agencies to kind of find?
So look, it's difficult. I mean, that's why these guys do what they do, and they use Bitcoin, which is harder to trace. It's harder to get back. We were speculating last week among myself and some of the other sheriffs that the reason that they make them do 3 or 4 transactions, they won't just take $25,000 from somebody at once. They'll have them do 4 or 5 transactions, 5,000 here, 3,000 here, 7,000 there. Is because we think that those go into different wallets. And so if they figure, okay, if law enforcement is successful enough and they freeze a couple of wallets, then at least we kept part of the money. So they're very technically savvy on how they do this stuff. We're looking into a service that'll actually help us track down some of these numbers. Another sheriff from Lowndes County, Virginia, helped me out with getting that, or Loudoun County, Virginia, helped me out with that information on which service offers that. It's expensive for the agency to buy into that service to be able to get it, but I think it's worth it if we can save some people some money and some heartache. Certainly we're looking at all avenues available. I'd love to see us put somebody in jail for this, but it is going to present some challenges. In every instance where there's an email or something attached to some of them, there have been some emails that they've used. Perhaps we can try to, with the help from our federal partners, with issuing subpoenas, perhaps we can get to the bottom of who these people are. I'd love to see it happen at some point, though.
And I know you're talking about statistics. Have you read the statistics? Is there somebody that they're specifically targeting in regards to demographic, maybe age, gender?
I tell you, just anecdote. We don't know. I mean, I hate to say that there's any certain demographic, and if you're outside that demographic, you stand less of a chance of falling for it. I can tell you, I personally, at least once every couple of weeks, I will get a call from somebody I know personally, and it's usually prominent business people, attorneys, doctors, that'll call me and say, hey, I'm on the phone with somebody that's claiming they're one of your deputies, and they blah, blah, no, hang up on them, and I'll tell them. And so if I'm getting that many phone calls on a daily basis or on a weekly basis from people that I personally know, I know it's going crazy out there. I know it's happening a whole lot. And so again, we just use it as a reminder that, look, this is a very common thing. They're very, very good at what they do. I know that at least one of these victims is a super educated person with a master's degree. I know for a fact, I know of one person that is a superintendent in the educational system, highly educated person, and this person did fall for it, and they took, I think, $10,000 from this person and kept this person on the phone, driving all the way from the valley to here, kept this person on the phone the whole time while they're scamming her out of money. So it's lucrative for these folks, and look, it works for them. That's why they continue to do it, because it's very successful to them, for them. Hopefully, doing some of the things that we're going to do, and again, my fingers are crossed. I think the city's going to buy in on this and help us out with it. Hopefully, we can better protect Bexar County and San Antonio residents from this being such an issue for us. Again, if it worked in another state, I'd bet dollars to donuts it's going to work here for us as well.
¿En qué casos se les hace fácil o difícil a las personas poder recuperar esos fondos?
Es muy dificultoso. Estos sospechosos usan la tecnología a su ventaja, y ellos saben bien lo que están haciendo. Para nosotros es bien dificultoso, pero eso no quiere decir que no vamos a tener éxito. Nosotros vamos a seguir trabajando con nuestros socios de las agencias federales. Nosotros vamos a usar cada manera de que nosotros sabemos a juntar estas personas, reunir estas personas con su dinero.
Sheriff, what message do you have to people out there, elderly people in particular, who feel like it's their fault, that they fell for it, they don't want to report it? What would be your message to encourage people? Because I'm sure there's a lot you don't know.
Sure, no, absolutely. I would bet good money that there's people out there that won't report this because they're embarrassed. Many times, especially as you mentioned with the elderly community, with the senior community, they've got adult children that have told them, Mom, Dad, don't fall for this, and then they fall for it, and they don't want to hear it from their adult children. They don't want to get lectured. I tell you right now, I got an 87-year-old dad that's stubborn as the day is long, and if he were to ever fall for one of these, he wouldn't in a million years tell me that this had happened. So the thing that I can tell people is, look, get over that and report it when it happens. Because if you don't report it, it's going to continue to happen out there. And not to say we can put a stop to it, but we can at least try to affect these people's livelihood. And maybe it'll stop. Maybe we can put somebody in jail. Maybe they'll move on to another community. Right now, Bexar County is my #1 priority, and we've got to keep these people safe here.
The gag order, do you have any advice about what the community could, try to piece together about why?
Just look, you got to ask yourself, does what I'm being told by this person, does it make sense? Why would they be telling me I can't answer my husband's call when he's calling me on the other line? That's weird. Why is the sheriff's office having me drive to a convenience store on the east side of San Antonio to pay a fine in some machine? Don't they have official channels for us to be able to do this? Like I said, law enforcement will never call you. And so you've got to just ask yourself, does what I'm being told make sense? I've seen where these scammers will actually have people buy Apple gift cards to pay their fine. Again, does that make sense? But that's why I think they're throwing so much information at these folks. The lady yesterday reported that she probably talked to 5 different people over the course of that 8 hours. They're just throwing different elements at her to keep her from orienting herself and getting her wits about her, and they're very fast talkers. Over the course of the 8 hours, think about it, spending 8 hours on the phone with any one person is going to wear you down, but they keep fresh people coming on the line with her to keep her second guessing herself and not being able to orient herself. So again, they know what they're doing. There's a lot of psychological factors that are going into this, not just the technological advantage they've got. They've also are throwing a lot of psychology type stuff at these victims. And yeah, I could see where they would fall for it unless we proactively get these people to understand how law enforcement really does these things, and then it doesn't make much sense.
¿Puedes repetir eso en español?
Hi. ¿Cuál parte?
De la Apple Card y de la...
Sí, nosotros hemos visto donde, en estos casos, las mandan a unas tiendas que tienen estas máquinas para hacer lo que están haciendo. Pero también hemos visto que les dicen a las víctimas que compran tarjetas de Apple para pagar las multas. Uno tiene que preguntarse, lo que me están pidiendo, lo que haga, no, ¿cómo dice?
No es legal.
No, bueno, no es que no es legal, pero lo que me están diciendo es algo ridículo. Y uno se tiene que fijar en eso. Por eso les estamos diciendo, mira, estos sospechosos son expertos a lo que hacen, ellos saben a lo que vienen, y a esto se dedican estos sospechosos. Entonces, uno como público, como miembro del público, tienen que saber que así no se hacen las cosas. Nosotros como agencias locales o federales, nosotros nunca les vamos a hablar, nunca les vamos a pedir dinero, nunca les vamos a decir que tienen orden por su arresto. Entonces, alguien tiene que ponerse a figurar que estas cosas son ridículas y no pueden pasar así.
Algo así, usted mencionó un punto muy importante, y es que un nuevo caso que están haciendo es que ahora le llamaron por videollamada, por un Zoom link.
Sí.
¿Cree que esto es inteligencia artificial o cree que simplemente se están haciendo pasar por un juez, y cómo pueden la gente saber que no es?
Es